You're watching the Brotherhood of Gaming video game show, the only video game show that will never forget and never let go. I'm your host, William Morris, and it's way too hot to be wearing this. It's not funny, I don't care. Anyway, gamers, we're here today to discuss a piece of hardware that has now earned its right to be in the Hall of Fame, and it's time for us to let it go and move on. That's right, the PlayStation Portable. Feels like only yesterday when the baby came out, and I was the first one in line to get it, and boy, I got suckered in because I didn't have anything to play on it for quite some time. But I digress. Over the years, the PlayStation Portable had managed to get quite a lot of interesting games on it. Some didn't get ported over here, but again, the PSP did manage to overcome and be a very successful handheld that many people still love today and still remember and will probably keep on playing, just like all of our other retro game consoles that we just cannot let go of, as we shouldn't. So today, we're going to look at the top 10, or I should say, my top 10 personal favorite games on the PlayStation Portable that I will never forget. So, let's get started.
I'll never let go. I promise.
Ranking in number 10 on the top 10 PlayStation Portable games would have to be Metal Gear Acid. Now, hold on, wait, don't click that X button. Hold on. See, Metal Gear Acid was actually the first PSP game that I owned, and it was almost quite pretty much a launch title for the console itself. Now, a lot of people absolutely hated this game when it first came out. In fact, I remember going in to purchase it, that the people behind the counters were telling me to, oh, you better be careful. You might not like this game, because even though it's Metal Gear, it doesn't exactly play like Metal Gear. I knew that going into it, because it was all about cards.
I won't spend too much time on explaining the game choices, as I'm sure you're all eager to move on to the next one. Metal Gear Acid was an ambitious take in the Metal Gear franchise, especially being a launch game. The elements of the series remain intact, however, utilizing them is much different. The game plays like a tactical turn-based adventure with a deck of cards for you, the player, and all the enemy CPUs. Moving cards, attack cards, and much more. You could get more powerful cards by finding them and purchasing them between levels. In all fairness, it's not a bad game, especially to those whom enjoy the slow-paced thinking games. But it definitely wasn't the Metal Gear fans were expecting, especially for a Kickstarter for the PSP. Oh well, I still enjoyed it, and I probably will be playing it in the future.
Coming in at number 9 on the PlayStation Portable top 10 video game list is God of War: Chains of Olympus. It's God of War, that's all I've got.
While I'm not terribly fond of the character of Kratos, I mean, face it guys, the guy is a jerk. Personal preference aside, I do enjoy mowing through the Greek mythology and tearing down the gods within them. Having started with God of War on the PlayStation 2, I moved my way through the series and continued to have fun doing so. While true, the series does get very repetitive, and square, square, triangle is still the most useful attack, God of War was another gore fest of fun to take you onto the road of victory.
Ranking in at number 8 for the top 10 PlayStation Portable games ever made, at least as far as I'm concerned, would have to be none other than Tenchu: Time Assassins. Now, in all honesty, I grew up a big diehard Tenchu fan, so of course it was going to be no doubt that I was going to try to get my hands on any Tenchu I could find anywhere. The series is kind of scarce, and as far as we know, it might be discontinued at this point because of unknown reasons, but the fact that we have an absolute awesome one on the PlayStation Portable is one everybody should try out at least once.
Tenchu has always been the perfect ninja-based series. No, it's not as action-packed as, say, Strider or Ninja Gaiden. No, these are the real ninjas. Sneaking, surprise attacks, quick, and back to the shadows. However, you can openly fight enemies all you wanted. Very similar to Metal Gear, actually. Time of the Assassins pretty much takes every character we know from the series and inputs them for player select and allows you to traverse many levels at your leisure. This is actually one of my most favorite of the Tenchu games, and I hope we get more.
Number 7 on the top 10 PlayStation Portable games ever made, as far as I'm concerned, would have to be done by Square Enix. Now, who would have thought that Square Enix, the people responsible for the Final Fantasy RPG series, would have gone out of their way to make a fighting game that actually blew everything out of the water? If you haven't already figured out that I'm talking about Dissidia Final Fantasy, get from under that rock.
Now, it wasn't the first time Square dabbled into fighting games that included their Final Fantasy characters, I mean, Air Gaze being the popular one to bring up, But to effectively create a brand new type of battle system that simulated what we had seen in previous movies was a pretty cool idea. And hell, everyone was on board. Call me wacky, but after seeing this, was standing still really that satisfying anymore? The game definitely knew the right path it had to take, including all of the main heroes and the main villains with familiar levels, and then having at it. It was fun, it was exciting, and it had a pretty clever collaborative story connecting it all together. I say check it out.
Whipping its way into the number 6 slot on the top 10 PlayStation portable games ever made, in my opinion, would have to be Castlevania The Dracula X Chronicles. Why Castlevania exactly? Well, growing up in the past just like the rest of you with video games, Castlevania was one of my growing up favorite franchises.
Oh, come on guys, by now you all know the story. Dracula and his army of horrors terrorized Transylvania, leaving you, the vampire hunter, to go and slay them all. It's an age-old concept, and it never got old for some reason. Dracula X Chronicles retold the story of Rondo of Blood, which was made over a decade earlier, with modernized visuals, a new voice cast, and redesigned levels and orchestra to enrich the experience of the adventure. And it worked! The feel of the game didn't change, but it did feel like you were playing something new. And as an added bonus, through level exploration you could unlock the original Rondo of Blood with an English cast as well as Symphony of the Night. So you literally got 3 games in one, and one of the most popular ones on a handheld no less. Needless to say, Richter Belmont is one of my favorite Belmonts of the clan too, so I was all for it. Face it, the Brotherhood of Gaming and Castlevania go hand in hand.
Slashing its way into number 5 in the top 10 PlayStation portable games ever made, in my own opinion. I'll give you a minute, you'll figure it out. Oh, don't worry, I'll wait.
I gotta be honest, I didn't start out a major Final Fantasy fan. I definitely respected it and knew of it through its prime, especially when 7 was concerned. Then around the mid-2000s, Final Fantasy VII really started picking up again in popularity, majorly probably due to the Kingdom Hearts series having expanded on the characters much more, as well as being an all-time success on its own. And like many, it compelled me to go back and try out more of the Final Fantasy games I purposely neglected. And at the time, Final Fantasy VII once again turned into the cash cow. It was getting new movies and the games were coming up once again, and even new ones were in the making. And to this day, Final Fantasy VII is still the fan favorite of the bunch, so I eagerly awaited the prequel dubbed Crisis Core, which would tell the story of lead character Zack Fair, whom through brief portions of Final Fantasy VII's mythology, vaguely got mentioned from time to time. If you knew your history, you more than likely already knew the tragic turn of events the story of this game was going to play out. And truth be told, it was very strong. The gameplay was a simplified battle system that was easy to pick up but very addicting, and the cinematics and detail with effort thrown in was simply breathtaking for the PSP. The story, of course, was the real seller. You knew what was going to happen, but still couldn't help but get emotionally invested into the main character, making it all the more tragic when you are in the final battle, knowing full well in advance how futile it all is. Even the music had a saddening reality to it. If I had to make a top 10 tearjerkers in video games, this definitely would have been one of them.
Striking its way into number 4 on the top 10 PSP games ever made. Just take a guess.
I'll be the first to admit, as spectacular as this franchise is, Square Enix's game plan might have been the worst ever done, practically alienating their entire fan base by spreading literally every sequel on individual consoles. Unless you were lucky enough, like a small handful of us whom happened to own every game console and handheld available, you were probably able to enjoy these games firsthand. Otherwise, you were kind of out of luck, and or worse, out of the loop of what was going on in the story. Birth by Sleep served as the prequel to the initial storyline and probably was the most important story of them all, because it sets up quite literally everything that happens in each game afterwards. Similar to Crisis Core, it doesn't exactly end on a high note. Going in, you already have an expectation of the tragic ending headed your way. In fact, the very tone of it is outlined that way. It's definitely one of the darkest entries in the series, and a little more serious because you feel the characters you're getting invested in have a lot more to lose in the long run. And unfortunately, that is what happens. And considering all of the suspense buildup, it really pays off, and only furthers the desire you may have to continue with each game, with the hopes that redemption and hope may save everyone in the end. One of the features I really enjoy in this tale is how pretty much every character has a story to tell and a plot point to be involved in. I haven't really discovered any throwaway characters whom didn't have a shed of importance. Just one of the many greats to find in Kingdom Hearts, I guess. If you don't like the series, that's fine. Like everyone in this world, some love it, some hate it, with different reasons behind each one. Some felt too alienated because of the console spread, or some just held a personal grudge against either Final Fantasy or Disney and felt the two should have never interacted in the first place. Whatever your opinion might be, one thing Kingdom Hearts did prove to millions is that with good writing and a passion for the source materials, just about anything can make a crossover. No matter how ridiculous it may sound, it just might work.
Sneaking its way into number 3 on the top PSP games ever made, according to my own opinion, is one that's kinda cheating, because it wasn't really so much made for the PlayStation Portable as much as it was ported. But it's still our all-time favorite video game ever made, a masterpiece on the PlayStation before it. So, Tales of Eternia, hands down.
I almost don't want to say too much on the ground that the Tales of Retrospective will do that for me, but I will mention a few things here. Tales of Eternia, to us, is one of the all-time highs of video game masterpieces. Although a product of its time, it still holds up strong and retains the same charm it did over 10 years ago. For us, and I'm sure others out there, it really is one of the perfect video games, and in context to the rest of the series, it's still unmatched. It did everything right. Though some of the formulas by today's standards are a little dated, it still has the greatest balance, so it never feels as such. With all of this praise, why isn't it number 1? Well, simply because it's not a PSP exclusive or a remake. It was a port from the original PlayStation 1, so it technically doesn't even qualify. However, it does make it on the high mark simply because it is one of the greatest gaming pleasures ever, and it's available on the go. That definitely counts for something. But the port isn't without a couple of mishaps. Being on a handheld, its multiplayer functionality is disabled, unfortunately. And word was, late in the game, there's a glitch that could possibly prevent game progress. I, however, never came across it, though. Be sure to stay tuned for the episode 3 of the Tales of Retrospective, which will further explore the history of Eternia and everything about it.
Blasting its way into number 2 on the top 10 PSP games ever made, by my own opinion, would have to be...
Oh yeah, now we're talking. Do I even really have to explain the praises that Mega Man X deserves? He was one of the reasons we got a Super Nintendo. And to get an updated remake of the very first one was an exciting venture we couldn't wait to get our hands on. Apparently, it was to serve as a series remake for the entire X series, as each one would have been remade too. Yet, sadly, because the PSP was easily hackable and because of its game had moderate sales, let the idea get debunked. So all we had was just the remake. And to its credit, it's a really damn good one. The updated visuals and cutscenes enrich the experience all the more, plus with the addition of the villain storyline as well as a 30-minute animated episode of the before events made Maverick Hunter X one of the must-haves in the PSP library.
I am the researcher who designed and built Mega Man X.
Now, understand that this is not the end-all be-all when it comes to PSP lists. There are a ton, there's a plethora of great and fabulous games on the PlayStation Portable that I couldn't fit into the top 10 list, and a lot of them I probably never even got to play all that much. So if your list differs, that's fine. I'm sure your games that you pick are just as awesome for you as these ones are for me. Now, no more Simon Says, no more guessing games. The number 1 spot on the top 10 PlayStation Portable games ever made, in my own opinion, has to go to a franchise. The Tales of the World Radiant Mythology series.
Tales of the World. While the series as a whole is worth the spot, I really want to give it up for Tales of the World Radiant Mythology 3. 3 titles, and they just about perfected their cameo set of adventure games. Of course, these are side games, not canon to the original sources, but seeing all of them interact together makes for some great fun with its own stories to interact with. Radiant Mythology 3 had the biggest roster, and while it's no Tales of Eternia remake, it was pretty damn close. Almost all of the Eternia cast was present and playable, with a lot of the levels from the original game redesigned and upgraded with 3D textures and a reorchestrated soundtrack. The Tales games are always easily addictive, with many likable characters, exciting gameplay, and so much more that needs to be saved once again for the Tales of Retrospective. Sadly, America only got the first installment of the 3, but for those who managed to play the later ones, definitely are aware of the improvements and the fun that came with it. As far as handheld games go, this is definitely a fitting style that perfects gaming on the go.
Regardless of the PlayStation Portable being easily hackable with custom firmwares and all that stuff, it still found a way to be majorly successful and found its way into the hearts of many gamers across the globe with many fabulous titles. Now, even though it's now made its way into the Hall of Fame, just like the Game Boy before it and the DS and all of those other great classics that we will never forget in our childhood, the PSP will always be remembered. For bad or for worse, it existed and it brought us joy. Until next time, gamers, keep on gaming. You've been watching the Brotherhood of Gaming video game show. Be sure to subscribe, check out our Twitter, Facebook, Google+, and all the other websites that will be in the description below, and we will see you next time. Be sure to tell us in the comments section what you thought your favorite games for the PSP was. And as always, gamers, once again, keep on gaming. See ya.